Good evening. I'll open the May 26th Planning Commission meeting. Welcome you all to join. We welcome participation in our meetings, and you can do it by accessing the webcast on the city's website, provide written comment at the same website, participating by phone, or coming to the Planning Commission meeting in person. Now I'll call the meeting to order and ask Commissioner Hatcher to lead us in the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, can we get the roll call?
Yes, Commissioner Antuna.
Here.
Commissioner Bested is absent. Commissioner Cunningham.
Here.
Commissioner Hatcher.
Here.
And Chair Hinkle is absent this evening.
Ready, thank you. This is the time for public comments. Oh no, I did take it back. It's the time for the Secretary's comments. Any comments?
Yes, we do. We do have some bittersweet news to share with the Commission, and I hope this is not a common occurrence every time I come to the Planning Commission and bring bad news. But last month we reported that we lost a staff member to the private sector. Well, today, this is our very own Deputy City Planner, Ricky Caperton's last Planning Commission hearing. He will be leaving us probably late next month. He accepted a management position. He'll be the head of the division for the planning department with the city of Napa. So it was shocking news, when I heard it, and but I think we're sincerely going to miss him, and we wish you the best, okay? And it's going to be tough, replacing him, but yeah,
we'll struggle.
Yeah, we'll struggle.
And we'll expect cases of wine at Christmas.
There you go. There you go. Yeah. And that's on the record, by the way.
Not the kind from 7-Eleven, Ricky, just so you know.
$2 chuck, yeah. Anything else?
That's it.
Thank you. I took it out of order, but we'll go ahead and go with the approval of the previous meeting's minutes. Any corrections, additions, subtractions? I'm waiting for a motion.
Motion to approve the April 28th, 2022 Planning Commission minutes. Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve May 26th, or the April 28th minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 3-0 with 2 absences. Go on next to. We have any comments from our members of the Planning Commission tonight? None? Nope. Okay. Now I'll open it to the public for any comment. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the Planning Commission on any matter within the Planning Commission's jurisdiction that is not listed on the agenda. In order for everyone to be heard, please limit your comments to 5 minutes or less, or 10 minutes per topic. Anyone wishing to be placed on the agenda for a specific topic should contact the Planning Division and submit correspondence at least 10 days before the desired date of appearance. Is there anyone in the chambers wishing to address the Planning Commission? Seeing none, is there anyone online?
There are none.
Thank you. We'll move to public hearings. Item number 1, consider approval of resolution general plan consistency finding for the proposed 2022-2023 community investment program. The staff at Thad Avery, we're all ears.
Good evening, Planning Commission. As you said, I'm Thad Avery. I'm the Community Investment Program Manager for the City of Clovis. Tonight I am presenting to you the proposed 2022-23 Community Investment Program budget, inclusive of the 5-year Community Investment Program. Section 65401 of the Government Code calls for the Planning Commission's review and consideration of the annual Capital Improvement Program. The City of Clovis refers to its Capital Improvement Program as a Community Investment Program. The purpose of this provision is to have the Planning Commission review the Community Investment Program and provisions to have the Planning Commission, the review the Community Investment Program and make specific finding that is conformance with the general plan and relevant specific plans. The City of Clovis Council can then proceed with adoption of the budget. Staff is recommending the adoption of a resolution finding the proposed 2022-23 Community Investment Program is consistent with the general plan and relevant specific plans of the City of Clovis. The proposed Community Investment Program budget is a 63-page document attached to the report submitted to the Planning Commission. The projects that are proposed in the program have been identified in consultation with and support from the various city department heads, their representatives, and other applicable staff. This collaborative process has assisted in forming a program that provides a selection of specific projects that are necessary for public service, utility, and/or safety purposes and are consistent with the city goals. Shown on this slide is a brief overview of the Community Investment Program. The 2022-23 CIP budget is a total of $43,021,000. On this chart, you can see how the capital projects are distributed in the project areas from government facilities, sewer, parks, streets, water, community sanitation, and community development. Various projects components consist of design, right-of-way acquisition, and/or construction. In 2022-23, the budget is comprised of 63 projects. The majority of the funding for the streets projects is from federal and state grants. In 2022-23, the budget has around $5.8 million in revenue coming from federal grants and regional emergency funding for specific projects. Gas sales tax provides for approximately $4.3 million in funding, and emergency pass-through funding is estimated at $3.25 million. We've seen construction costs on the rise in the past year due to an increased amount of projects in the area, shortage of supplies, and increased cost of materials. We are unsure if this trend when it will end, but it could affect the amount of projects we're able to construct in the future. Some noteworthy projects in the budget are an assortment of street improvement projects in both the design and construction phases of work, including our annual Cape and Slurry Seal project that provides preventative maintenance for over 10 miles of local streets a year. We're going to widen the Sunnyside Avenue from 3rd to 5th. We're going to do signalization at intersections of Shepherd, Peach, and Nees and Armstrong. We're going to acquire property in the northwest area for major water facilities needed for future development. And we're going to develop dog parks at Letterman Park and Sierra Bicentennial Park. By request of the Commission, I have included an update of some of the noteworthy projects from this past year, including Landmark Square. On the top left is an aerial view of a recent photo. It kind of shows that the shell of the building is already there, and they're working diligently on the inside. Construction schedule will be complete in the spring of 2023. Fire Station 6 in the middle, construction is almost complete with the plan of moving crews in the beginning of this fiscal year. Fire Station 2, the temp building at the fire training facility, construction has begun and scheduled to be complete this fall. The Fire Station 2 rebuild, design is near completion, is on schedule to start construction when the building for the fire training facility is complete. Shaw Avenue widening, which is a small picture on the top right, has started construction on Phase 1 from Leonard to McCall with a scheduled completion of spring of 2023. Upon completion, we hope to follow up Phase 1 with Phase 2 from DeWolf to Leonard. The off-site construction for the Loma Vista Village Green is near completion, and the construction for the park is scheduled to begin this summer. That concludes my presentation. I'm available for questions.
Do you have any questions for Thad? I have a quick one, more from information than anything else. On Landmark Square, any update on the library portion?
I think I'm gonna have to defer on that one. I don't.
To the big boss, yeah.
Good evening, Commissioners. So we have been in touch with Fresno County. We've met with their public works staff. They are still in design. They're probably right now about a year out from going out for construction, but we're still working through the Department of Toxic Substance Control and the issues on site, which the county needs to see where we end. We're hoping to have a letter of no further action once our additional testing and results are back. So once we can finish that and then get the property exchange agreement settled out with the county, then they'll be in a more solid position. But right now, they're still in their design phase.
Thank you. On item 1, I'll open it to the public. Is there anyone in chambers wishes to comment on the item that Mr. Avery's just discussed? Seeing no one, is there anyone online?
There are none.
Thank you. Bring it back to the commission for discussion and a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve general plan consistency and finding for the proposed 2022-23 community investment program.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Would you like to give the roll call?
I have a motion by Commissioner Hatcher and a second by Commissioner Antuna to approve a general plan consistency finding for the proposed 2022-2023 community investment program. Commissioner Antuna?
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham?
Yes.
Commissioner Hatcher?
Yes.
And for the record, Commissioner Bedstead and Chair Hinkle are absent.
Okay, thank you. We'll move over to item number 2. Consider approval of a resolution to amend the Loma Vista Community Center's North and South Master Plan to remove the planned local street identified as Marengo Avenue within Planning Area 1 and Planning Area 2 and to adjust the underlying R3 zone district to reflect the modified circulation layout. AP Multifamily LP, property owner, Walton Costanos Homes, applicant, a Precision Civil Engineering representative. Mr. Merchant is our planning staff.
Thank you, Chair Pro Tem and members of the Commission. As you noted, this item is a request to amend the Loma Vista Community Center's North and South Master Plan. The proposal would eliminate the portion of a local street alignment that's shown as Marengo Drive. Really, Marengo Drive is an existing street alignment that already exists outside of the project area, and so this proposed local street would take on that name when it's eventually developed. The portion that would be eliminated is shown with the X's on the graphic that's shown on the screen currently. The second portion of the project proposes to extend the existing R3 residential zone. And both of those components are intended to prepare the site for a future residential development that would go basically on the kind of the square portion of the site at its northern end. The development of this project in a manner consistent with the R3 zone district has been under evaluation for a number of years, even before I arrived with the city in the summer of 2019. And then going back and looking at some of that interaction, it's clear that the city's had a lot of interest in seeing the higher density residential portions of the community center developed. And so having a residential entity that does development, working on this, has been something the city's looked forward to for a long time. Finding the path to a project that works here has taken a little bit longer, obviously, and the applicant here, Watson Castanos, has identified that with these changes, they'll be able to proceed with a final design, which would come back and be approved probably within, I guess I can't speak for them, but shortly after approval of these requests, if that's ultimately what happens. A little bit of background on the Community Centers Master Plan. The plan itself was adopted back in 2009 as a specific requirement of the Loma Vista specific plan, which said that this master plan needed to be done before any development could occur within the boundaries of the master plan. It covers about 275 acres of mixed uses. It's characterized by pedestrian-oriented, higher density residential, commercial, and open space. There's been some single-family residential developed here already, not so much of the higher density residential that we're talking about this evening. One of the characteristics is the integration of the residential and commercial areas, particularly within the kind of the purple area on that screen at the north end, a portion of which is included in the subject property. The yellow line now on the same map demonstrates the configuration of the subject property within the planning areas that define the Community Centers Master Plan. So as you noted, the purple portion is a mixed use designation that allows a combination of residential and commercial, and then the brownish area is strictly residential, higher density residential. So to talk a little bit more about the amendments that are proposed, again, this is a little bit closer in on the same kind of map showing what the current zoning looks like with the subject property. So as I noted, the proposal would eliminate a portion of the local street identified as Marengo. This is the portion about 700 feet in length that would be eliminated if the master plan amendments are proposed. And it's important that we note that there's a specific section of Marengo that's involved that would be eliminated, because actually the portion on the south end, let's see if I can get this to work here. The portion down here is essential in order for some of the other features of the master plan to continue to function. And I'll talk about that here in just a little bit. The second portion is to extend the existing R3 zoning. So if you look closely at that map around the Marengo alignment, basically the area to be rezoned covers the area that used to be designated for Marengo, and then just a little bit of a sliver of the existing C3 zone would be converted to the R3 zone. Together, those amendments would result in a configuration that's shown on the screen, which includes basically no Marengo alignment within that northern portion of the project, and then R3 and C3 zones abutting one another. Probably the first consideration when we looked at eliminating the local street is whether the circulation layout and the streets would continue to function appropriately without that portion of Marengo. The street classification that is included with the master plan is shown on the screen. That street classification system is unique to the Community Centers Master Plan. And so basically what that means, and you probably can't quite make out the little bit of a legend there for whatever reason, it just has always printed very lightly, is the street identifiers, the names of the street types are just unique to this area. But in general, Marengo is a type of local street. That's all the purple streets that are called urban neighborhood streets. The function of that type of street is to provide access to the properties on its alignment. So it's not really intended to gather or handle large amounts of trips. It's really effectively an urban residential neighborhood street, which is shown in this adopted cross-section, which shows kind of a standard residential street, houses on both sides, tree line, sidewalks, park strip, on-street parking. So it's a pretty typical residential street. These kinds of local streets are not usually included in master plans like the one that we're talking about. Usually, local streets are designed in conjunction with the projects that are proposed. They're flexible in terms of accommodating different land use configurations, and really the key consideration is where do those streets intersect with the major streets, and is there enough separation between intersections and so forth. In the case of the master plan, some of these local streets were identified as being critical to achieving the goals of the master plan. And specifically, portions of the Marengo alignment are necessary to support the Main Street or the Sanders Avenue undercrossing at Shaw Avenue. And this is a picture from the master plan as to what the undercrossing would look like. So this is not just a conceptual idea. The undercrossing is part of a plan set that will go out to bid probably towards the end of, well, probably about a year from now. But it is in the design that will be put out to bid. So a little bit more about how that undercrossing works. So if you find yourself, and we're talking kind of just to bring us to the context again, we're talking about something that I can't show you here because my pointer no longer works. We're talking about basically where Keats and Marengo intersect on the northern end of this graphic. So if you are on Shaw Avenue and you want to get to Main Street where that star is located. Thank you, Sean. See if this helps? There we go. We're talking about this area up here is the project area. So if you're on Shaw and you want to get to where the star is, you can't turn directly onto the Red Street, Main Street, because it will be below grade at that location. So in order to get there, basically you've got to go all the way down to the frontage road and then up the Marengo alignment and over Keats to Main Street. So that's why when we talk about the function of Marengo, the southern part of Marengo is essential, and we shouldn't consider the elimination of that portion of the street, or else the undercrossing design probably starts to falter. Now, exactly where Marengo might get developed, I think there's probably some flexibility there. And for whatever reason, the street on the, let's just call it the right side of Main, that doesn't show any ties into Main Street, and I'm not sure why that is. I think this basically is a general reflection that these are local streets, and we kind of split the difference between trying to accommodate the major function and making the undercrossing work, with the acknowledgement that local streets have some flexibility in where they're installed and how they're designed. So to talk a little bit more about Main Street and Sanders alignment, that is a commercial and mixed-use pedestrian environment that's specifically kind of planned for this section of Sanders Avenue between Shaw Avenue and San Jose on the north end. It's graphically, conceptualized, if you will, by the picture on the right, a very active, vibrant area intended to kind of draw folks from one side of Shaw to the other, and really be an interesting place where commercial and residential, higher density residential, function together with one another. As we've noted, the proposed project would not limit the ability of that Main Street concept to come to fruition. There's a pretty good chunk of just straight up commercial zoning that would be intact on the project site along Sanders Main Street. Depth is hard to tell from this map, but it ends up being a couple hundred feet of depth. We've looked at that, and it would accommodate both kind of the Main Street corridor and parking, and then have some porosity or some access back and forth between the commercial corridor and the adjacent residential project. We've also looked at the trails and gateway features of the master plan to ensure that there aren't any limitations or restrictions that would be created by the proposal. Trails in this portion of Loma Vista are planned along the Main Street alignment, which again is this, this corridor here. You can maybe just see the kind of the faint green shown on the edge, as well as the Jefferson Canal corridor. And then there are enhanced community gateways, which are the purple and green kind of asterisks that are shown along DeWolf and Leonard Avenues, where other streets intersect them. And so the takeaway here is that there are no trail alignments or gateway locations that would be affected by the proposal. And in terms of residential development, the city has approved a number of amendments to the master plan for this area previously to facilitate various residential projects. Those are outlined in your staff report. A lot of those have involved changes to both circulation and the development standards included in the master plan. Those standards would continue to apply to the project that eventually we hope gets developed here. There are no changes proposed to those standards, and they would be implemented assuming that we actually do get a project coming in. So I wanted to speak just briefly about the transition to expand the R3 zoning just a little bit. So the underlying land use designation for this area is a combination of compatible residential and mixed use. And the mixed use village land use designation does allow residential at the densities that we're considering here. So there isn't any conflict between the proposed R3 extension and the general plan. And as I've tried to explain, it's also consistent with this Main Street concept, where we're looking to have higher density residential next to, adjacent to the commercial areas. And in some cases, if we can get it even vertically integrated in a vertical mixed-use project. So the proposal in terms of extending the residential zone doesn't conflict with either the general plan or the intent of the master plan. And again, that's just a confirmation of the area that would be reclassified to R3. So in summary, the proposed amendments to the master plan are proposed to allow a residential project to move forward. The project would be consistent with the intent of the master plan and the Loma Vista specific plan. We haven't identified any goals, any conflicts with the goals and key features of the master plan that would be diminished or endangered by the proposed project. And the change of a small area from the C3 to the R3 zone district is consistent with the underlying land use designations. Also, as we've noted, we took a look at the implementation in the past of the master plan and how residential projects in particular have utilized the master plan. It's pretty clear that there's been a handful, half a dozen or so, amendments of various types to the master plan that have been approved in the past to accomplish residential projects or to make them feasible. And we feel that the proposed changes here are within the scale and scope of what the city has previously looked at as being reasonable. So based on those conclusions, staff is recommending the adoption of a resolution recommending that the City Council approve the proposed master plan amendments. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dave. Do we have any questions from the commission to Mr. Merchant? None? Okay. And I'll throw it out to the audience then. Do we have the applicant here who wishes to speak at all?
But, oh, there we go. Sorry about that. Good evening. My name is Eric Gibbons. I'm with Watson Castanos. Also with me is Adrian Burns, Vice President at Watson Castanos. I just want to take a quick second and say thank you to the City of Clovis staff. It's been years as we've been looking through this, from Brian and Dwight to Renee and Dave, and it's been fantastic. It's been a chore, as you could see from the maps. Trying to get the property, having something that would actually work in that small area with that road in is a huge challenge to get any kind of multifamily community in there. So we're just really grateful for all their help, and we concur with staff's recommendations and conditions, and we're here for any questions that you may have. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. Gibbons? Thank you. Do we have anyone else in the audience wishing to speak on this item? Seeing none, is there anyone on the line?
There are none.
Okay, I'll bring it back to the commission for discussion and a motion then. Okay.
Yeah.
Motion?
Yeah, thank you. Motion to approve the request to amend the Loma Vista Community Center's North and South Master Plan to remove the planning local streets identified as Margot Avenue within the Planning Area 1 and Planning Area 2.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. Would you call the roll?
Yes. I have a motion by Commissioner Antuna and second by Commissioner Hatcher to approve rezone 2008-007A3. This is a request to amend the Loma Vista Community Center's North and South Master Plan to modify the street layout and zoning in planning areas 1 and 2. Commissioner Antuna?
Yes.
Commissioner Bedstead is absent today. Commissioner Cunningham?
Yes.
Commissioner Hatcher?
Yes.
And Chair Hinkle is absent today.
Thank you, George. Okay, we can move on to item number 3. This is consider items concerning conditional use permit 2020-004, allowing the expansion of an existing athletic training facility to include outdoor training activities and events for a portion of the approximately 0.6 acre property located at 340 Clovis Avenue. Athletic performance applicant David Standifer, representative. The commission is going to review compliance with the conditions of approval for conditional use permit 2020-004. And B, consider approval of a resolution revoking the conditional use permit 2020-004 for non-compliance with the conditions of approval. And as we have a bare quorum tonight of 3, any action taken by the commission must be unanimous. Is that correct, Mr. City Attorney? Thank you. Mr. Merchant.
Thanks, Commission. As you noted, tonight's discussion will include a review of compliance with the conditions of approval and the consideration of a resolution revoking the CUP based on noncompliance. The Commission is well acquainted with the project, but just a little bit of background. The original conditional use permit for this project was approved back in September of 2020 to allow outdoor training in conjunction with an existing athletic training business. Based on the conditions of approval, a one-year review was completed by the Commission in October of 2021. And at that point, because of the nature of the non-conforming conditions, there was a follow-up discussion set for January 27th of this year. Again, during the January 27th meeting, a number of conditions were found to be out of compliance, which brought upon the scheduling of this meeting tonight. During the January 27th meeting, the conditions of approval were modified to reflect the progress that had been made on eliminating some of the compliance issues that had been raised previously during the October of 2021 review. So the nature of those corrections, including the applicant changing operational practices to terminate any special events or any problems with the special events, as well as some operational practices that were implemented to resolve some conflicts with the neighboring properties. So those were proactive changes made by the applicant and were reflected in the conditions of approval that were changed and became the current conditions back in January. So as of today, there are 33 conditions in place after the modifications. Really, there were 9 of those 33 conditions where there had been some kind of compliance issue that was been previously raised. 7 of those conditions related to sidewalk, frontage, and trash enclosure improvement requirements. There was one condition requiring backflow prevention device testing, and there was one condition that related to annexation into the landscape maintenance district. The applicant, since the January 27th meeting, has primarily been focused on working towards the acquisition of the property that he had come to terms on the price with the current owner as of the January meeting, but he hadn't actually entered escrow. Since then, at the end of April, the applicant executed an agreement with the owner to purchase and finance the property. I spoke with him this evening. He's indicated that effectively that property transfer would happen with his first payment in June. So that has been probably the major obstacle, as the applicant has explained it, to being able to invest in the site and get the conditions completed. Since that happened at the end of April, the design for the sidewalks and trash enclosures has been initiated. There was a survey that was performed by an engineering firm. The applicant has also lined up a contractor to complete the improvements that would happen upon approval of the design. That lining up with the contractor happened in April or early May. The applicant did come in and pay the plan check fees for the improvement plans just a little over a week ago. The target date for the submission of the initial plan set was earlier this week. That has not yet occurred, but the engineer is working on it, we understand. The applicant did provide a letter dated May 19th as part of your packet, where he elaborates on his efforts to purchase the property and describing how that delay in the purchasing of the property has affected his ability to complete the outstanding improvements. I'm sure he'll also wish to speak to that here this evening. As of today, the 9 conditions that were previously noted as being out of compliance are still out of compliance. Again, those all relate to construction of physical improvements, LMD annexation, which is landscape maintenance district, and backflow device testing. There are 3 alternatives, at least 3 alternatives for taking action this evening. The Commission may very well identify other options that aren't included here. The 3 options that we've identified can be identified or described as to revoke, suspend, or extend the CUP. The revoke option would find that the project is out of compliance with the existing conditions of approval and simply move to revoke the CUP in question. That is the option that is outlined as the recommendation in the staff report, and really is a reflection of the clarity of the direction given by the Commission at the January 27th meeting, where it was pretty clear that based on the history of compliance or lack of compliance on those issues, that May 2nd or even May 26th this evening was the deadline. So with that in mind, staff took that approach and has forwarded that as part of our recommendation. Option 2 would be to essentially to allow additional time for the applicant to complete the improvements, but to suspend all of the outdoor activities that are occurring under the CUP. So it kind of look to maybe restart the clock, if you will, on what would typically happen as part of a conditional use permit process. The applicant in his letter identified that he was willing to do that if that was necessary or desired by the Commission. Option 3 would also provide additional time that would simply establish a new date for completion of the conditions, and the existing outdoor operations could continue to whatever date the Commission specified. Options 2 and 3 are reasonable alternatives. Staff does not object to those. If the Commission finds that there are extenuating or mitigating circumstances, particularly with the ownership situation that has finally evolved, we would suggest or maybe observe that if option 2 or 3 is something desired by the Commission, that some pretty specific and firm commitments on completing the design of the improvements and initiating work be included, or at least that you get that commitment from the applicant as to that work can be done. So as noted, staff is recommending a resolution finding the project is out of compliance and to revoke the CUP in question, but also that you consider those alternative actions as you deem appropriate, assuming that the Commission determined that there were extenuating or mitigating circumstances. We'd be happy to answer any questions, and I know the applicant is here and would like to speak to the issue.
Thank you, Dave. Do you have any questions for Dave? None, that's okay. I'll open it to the applicant. Is the applicant here or wish to speak?
Good evening. Yeah, unfortunately, I did not want to get to this position again. We had everything price-wise with the owner set before our meeting in January. We had submitted all of our financials to him at that point. When we started going through it, we wanted to go down the SBA route. We wanted to have a set payment for 25 years.
For the record, could you give us your name and address?
Oh, I'm sorry. David Standifer, owner of Athletic Performance.
Thank you.
So we go through the process. We have the SBA approval. He comes back and is adamant that he carries the note. He wants the interest payment. So my attorney's with me. He was fighting with him on that. If we didn't go with his terms, he wanted to raise the price of the purchase price 30%, which as a business, it wouldn't have been able to float at that point. After our January 27th meeting, we also found out that there was a local construction company that was also interested in the building. And at that point, he knew he had us, so we had to go with his terms of 7 years, a balloon payment at the end of the 8 years for the property. Throughout the process, he kept trying to add different terms. If we were trying to pay the property off early in advance with an SBA loan, he wanted to add the 30% to the purchase price. And it was a fight after that. It came to a point where even his attorney down in LA came back and said that you can't do that. And that's where finally, at the end of April, we were able to get an agreement in place that June 1st, our payment is due. We officially have access to the property at that point. For me, I hope you guys understand, it was nothing that I believe that their stuff needs to be done. I was talking with Mr. Merchant about it, is we want to redo the whole front of the building to make it nice because it's our future home. But for us to spend the kind of money that it was going to take and us not own the property, it just didn't make business sense for us. And for that, I know we were on borrowed time, but that was the circumstances. And now that we do own the property, we already have the funding. Like Mr. Merchant said, we've already started the process of getting the engineering plans, paying the fees, and we already have a contract with Toasted Construction. As soon as Sean and his staff approve it, then they can start going with it. So for me, I understand your guys' frustration with what we're trying to do, but it was never intentional. It was trying to make sure that we're looking at almost $100,000 in renovations. My gym does $300,000 in yearly sales. For us to spend a third of our revenue and not be able to own the property and he sell it out from underneath us, at that point we're either bankrupt or we're losing a lot of money at that point that I don't know that we can survive. So now we have all the funding, we have everything in place to get everything done. We want to be a part of this community. My mom owns an antique store here in Old Town, and it's been a part of what we're trying to do. So, like I said, I understand your guys' terms, and for that I apologize, but we were trying to do everything we could, and unfortunately with an owner that wasn't going to work with us to make it, feasible for the company, that was the biggest holdup for us. You know, I hope that the two choices of suspension or, you know, extension is something that you guys will consider, because we do want to get the project done. We want to make it a really nice facility for Old Town Clovis with everything else, and, you know, that's what we're hoping for.
Thank you. We have questions from Mr. Standifer.
Just a couple questions. I understand the financial difficulties, and you didn't want to spend that type of money. The two things that you could have done that weren't going to cost much were the backflow and like the LMD. Why did you not go down that road and try to get those done?
The backflow was done last year from Dirty Ernie, and then I already submitted another request to Dirty Ernie to do this backflow. That's the company that does it. And I talked to them, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago for them when I got the letter from the water department. I can't remember the exact date, but when I got that, I called them to reevaluate and do the inspection at that point.
Okay. Because those are two things that wouldn't cost that much to be done. And I guess my other concern is, I've been doing this for like 11 years. I don't think I've ever voted to revoke somebody. So that's not something we would take lightly at all. But bearing in mind, I think you should have been a little more forthright and communicated more with the cities who could have communicated with us, rather than have it get all the way to tonight, you know. Because you kind of knew at our last meeting that we were at a drop dead point. It's been a long time. So you are open to the suspension and stopping all of your outdoor activities if we choose to go that route?
For me, if we lose that outdoor area for what we've done this year, backstory for us is we're really trying to go hard training NFL players for the draft. And for us to be able to have that field and be able to step out onto it this year, we were able to get guys from LSU, Kentucky, the big name colleges, whereas before we were not able to. So for us to lose that side of our training and everything else would hurt us big time financially at that point.
I agree. I understand that. I do. But bearing in mind, you've had quite a long time to get these things done. So I guess to me, the question would be, what guarantee would we have if we agreed to just extend it again, that these things would actually get done? I mean, there would have to be firm, hard dates put in place before I would ever consider that, just for my vote.
For me, that's what we came up with, is complete first plan submittal by June 3rd, final plan approval, signed plans no later than July 25th, and a construction completion 100% complete and acceptable by August 15th. We're hoping the end of July, but when we were talking with Sean and the engineering, that's where it could take a little bit of time to make sure that the plans, we already talked to Toasted Construction. They don't have a lot on their books for the summer already, so they said if we get approval, then as soon as everything's signed off, then they're able to start the work.
Okay, thank you.
Please forgive me if I mispronounced your last name, Mr. Standifer? Standifer. Okay, I apologize for that. First, I want to tell you that I appreciate your business in Old Town, and I do believe that your business is needed in our community and you bring a benefit to it that's there. Now, having said that, for me, you have received the benefit of the CUP since September of 2020, in addition to receiving the benefit of having outdoor activities, having special events, and in that sense, as you know from our prior meetings, not being in compliance with what was requested of you. That was in October. In January, we removed some of those conditions to possibly assist with that. You made a decision you weren't going to participate in those items. But at that time, I do believe that you were given very specific questions. We asked you and your engineer who's here regarding the timing, and if you believed you would be able to comply with these items today. At that time, you reassured us, as you are reassuring now when I hear you speak to Amy, I'm sorry.
That's funny.
To the other commissioners, as far as what you will be able to generate. Now, I do know that at our January meeting, staff provided information as to how long it would take to get your permits, how long this process that now you're describing that does take a while. They were very forthcoming in that what was required. And although your business is not any different than any other lessee's business who has a different owner, and we would expect for them to comply with the regulations and conditions of a CUP. When entering into the CUP, you were a lessee at that time. You were talking to the owner of the property to purchase the property. Now, that was in 2020. We're in 22 in May, and you mentioned that you are the owner now. Does that mean your escrow has closed?
June 1st, that's when our first payment is due.
Okay, so your escrow hasn't closed yet. I mean, you're almost there, but I've seen stuff happen right at the end, so I'm just asking. So at the January meeting, I did mention that we feel that the commission has been very accommodating to your needs, and I am with my fellow commissioner in that, in looking at the timeline and the outline of what city staff has provided us, there was no communication from you, although there was efforts from the city staff to communicate with you since the day after our meeting, which was in January, and it didn't appear that you responded until April. Now, I do believe that that could have been done better, and possibly keeping city staff in the loop of what was occurring. So at this time, for me, I believe that the commission has been accommodating to your needs. And although I understand and I sympathize with your plight to acquire this property, but as I stated, when you went into this process with the CUP in 2020, you were a lessee, knowing that, well, you probably didn't think that you'd get to this point, obviously, with the owner, but knowing that at that time you accepted all the conditions that were set before you without being an owner. And so you said yes to the 9 things that still remain outstanding, which is the garbage can and all of the modifications to the property that, of course, as you stated, are over $100,000 in expenses. But at that time you said yes, as a lessee.
For me, during that, we thought the fees, the construction cost was going to be way less. During that time, we thought the scope of work was going to be somewhere around $35,000 to $40,000. So for me, I could take out a mortgage on my house and pay for that. Once I buy the building, then I could pay that back. But then as things started to happen and seeing how bad the infrastructure of that area was, then there had to be engineering plans. There had to be added expenses at that point. The other part was with us doing that financially, when it started to rise, that was when it was like, all right, now we have to push this owner as hard as we can, because then we have to pull out a secondary loan to pay for the added expenses. When we did the original CUP, I thought it was going to be somewhere around $35,000 to $40,000 for total, and that was, looking back, that's my fault on that. With talking to people, that's what the original their cost was. But that's now where us being able to own the property, we have the capital, we have the loan that we can move forward. That's why we've been trying to hustle and try to get the surveys, pay the fees for the engineering. All of that is to show that we are serious and we are trying to move as fast as we possibly can at that point.
Okay.
Mr. Standifer, you know, we're not the enemy up here.
I know.
I've been on only since 2016. This is the first event that I've had to consider. And I'm sure Commissioner Antuna came on the same time I did. I recognize and sensitive to your plight with the COVID, and all business owners in Old Town had, additional burdens, and we're attuned to that. We're very sensitive to that. But like my other commissioners sitting up here, I recall very vividly, January 27th, and what we laid out. And we said at the time, every one of us said, I listened to the recording again.
Right.
Every one of us said, we are geared toward your success. But success is a two-way street. And from the 27th, the city, through primarily Mr. Smith, our engineer, communicated with you on the 30th of January, the 2nd, and 1st and 2nd of February, March the 2nd, March 18th, and all of that with no response back from you until April the 7th. You know, that's really difficult for me to get my head around, because I view us as trying to partner with the businesses, and I don't feel as though we had a good partner with you. I really don't. And now you're asking us to believe in you for a little bit longer, and you understand how tough that is.
I truly do.
Yeah.
You know, I understand that, and the communication on my part should have been better, and I take full responsibility for that one. It doesn't make it right. We really thought we were losing the property to the other company, so we were in scramble mode. What are we going to do with our business? And like I said, I know it doesn't make it right, but that was where our mindset was at, was as a company that we've been in business 20 years, to not know what's going to be our next move was very, very terrifying. We come out of COVID. I lost a lot of money during COVID, as long as a lot of other businesses, and finally we started to get our momentum back. And when we were at the January 27th meeting, we had everything in play, and we thought that moving forward, it was just going to go. And unfortunately, the owner fought us on every turn. I understand that it's both ways, but that's why I want to be a part of this community. That's why we've been here. And, you know, if you guys suspend I will make sure it gets done. We won't be on there to show that, hey, we do want to be a part of it, and I'll padlock the thing up. Nobody can get on there to show that we are dead serious and get the work done. And then when you guys give us the okay, we can go back on it. I hope that you guys don't revoke, because it would hurt, but I understand your guys' dilemma too. But I can show you guys all the paperwork, all the emails and stuff from the owner, all the changes and everything else. And, you know, I hope you guys do. I do want to stay here, and I do want to grow our business.
All right, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the chambers wishing to speak on this item? You'd be kind enough to let us know your name and where you're from.
My name is Justin Harris. I'm the attorney for applicant. I didn't speak at the January 27th meeting. I believe I spoke at the one which preceded that, if I recall.
October.
Yes. And I just wanted to, you know, maybe lend a little bit of additional perspective, as I will represent to this body that I have done 8- and 9-figure transactions, which were significantly easier than this, which I will also represent to you I've done on a pro bono basis, because I train at Athletic Performance, and I've been there for not 20 of the years, but most of them, at least 3 locations ago. And so I am committed to the cause. I can assure you this has been probably one of the most expensive projects that I've worked on, for which I've not been compensated. And I don't say that to slight Dave, but rather to share how committed I am to the project. The perspective I want to lend is I think important, because it's not been for want of trying. Could David have communicated better with city staff, certainly. He owns up to that. I think he accepts responsibility for that. This has been a remarkable project, not just this project, but this gym, and that all 4 of my boys, the last of whom left the nest in August, yay, team empty nester, all of them had the good fortune of being trained at athletic performance, and so we're certainly committed to the cause. Dave is correct when he shares that this has been very difficult. It has been a constant battle to try and keep things on track. But to Commissioner Antuna's concern about closing, because I think he had a concern about the closing, I do believe it's going to close by the 31st, actually. The holdup on the closing, now that we, just this morning, in fact, there was yet another add-on to escrow instructions, which, well, I can't endorse violence, but it's very frustrating. Would cause me a lot of consternation. But we resolved that. All the documents are approved. The only thing that we are coordinating right now is a notary, because the owner is in the District of Columbia. All the other documents can be signed by counterparts, meaning, or I can have David go over to escrow. I think he's provided copies of some of the escrow paperwork, some of which was revised in a minor way today. But I believe it's going to close. I'm also a licensed real estate broker and have closed hundreds of transactions, both as a lawyer and a broker. And so this has been, like I said, certainly a labor of love. One of my concerns about, I understand that, of course, my preference is that you simply extend, and I understand that I'm willing to commit my good name and reputation to ensuring and doing everything I can. If I have to tackle Dave to make sure that he gets this done, I'm happy to do so, because I think it's important that he has that opportunity to complete it. That revoking seems to me to be nothing more than, though not the intention of the Planning Commission, the net effect, I think, would be punitive. I think we'd just be back here again, and meanwhile, you still got a terrible-looking sidewalk and terrible-looking garbage enclosure. So I think if the commitment is really to not only advance the business, but to advance the look and the appeal and have these things look great, then I think the best option is simply to extend. But I think, as staff recommended, to the extent that you gave some hard deadlines, and there would be, if you want him to sign something that says, I promise I won't beg you, then he could certainly do so. And that would be my recommendation as his counsel. So, I'm happy to answer any questions about the process. I don't know that I need to elaborate much further than to say it's been a ride. So, any questions that I can address for the commission?
Any questions?
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else in the chambers wishing to speak on this item? Seeing none. Anyone on the internet?
There are none.
Thank you. I'll bring it back to the commission for discussion and a motion. Sure.
Well, as I stated earlier, I'm not keen on the idea of revoking because we've never done that, and I think, that just is not something I think that I'm prepared to do. Having said that, I'm not willing to just extend without some sort of repercussions, because we've done that, and we've done that a couple of times. The idea of suspending and having certain portions of the facility not being used, I'm more amenable to. I'm open to see what your thoughts are on that. But again, with the conditions of very firm dates, this is not a suspension indefinitely. This is a very firm date, and if they're not met, it's drop dead, point.
I think that for me, also a revocation seems to be a little harsh. And we've never done it. There are things in place for a reason, whether we've done them or not. Having said that, I would be open to a suspension of all related activities to the CUP, because I believe that this applicant has received the benefit for the last 2 years of having a CUP without having to be in compliance. So if he is willing to forego all items that are being allowed to him with the CUP until he brings everything into compliance, then I would be open to an extension. But I do, like I said, believe that we have allowed him quite a long time to come into compliance. And I would hate to see other businesses coming through here that are lessees who get into this predicament, and we find ourselves in this situation. I do believe that conditions are placed on businesses who come to us with CUPs for a purpose, and they ought to be complied with. It's an agreement. You make a contractual agreement that you will abide by these conditions, and that hasn't been the case in this time.
I appreciate what you're saying, Elma. I do. And I appreciate what Amy has said as well. It seems to me that if we choose not to revoke tonight, that we give the applicant one final chance to redeem himself with this commission and with the city. And to put a suspension which would cut into his business and profitability, I think would be counterproductive, at least in my view. I'm very attuned to what you said, and I align myself with that. But I would not be opposed to extending, given an extension to have them completed with the understanding that if it isn't, we just revoke. That's it. But I'll acquiesce to the other two commissioners, understanding we've got to be unanimous.
So
unless you wanted to table it for
I don't think that would get us very far.
okay.
I don't think that would get the applicant very far to table it, because he's still going to be in limbo. So you would not want to put any restrictions on, just give another extension, basically, is what you're...
If I heard the applicant correctly, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, to restrict his ability, particularly with the outside, at this point in time, would have a detrimental effect to his business, serious detrimental effect. Am I misstating that, Mr. Denver? Okay. So I want, again, we're not the enemy. We're really trying to help you, but boy, it's a two-way street. I was not happy when I got my package. I really wasn't, because it seems to me we went overboard to help you, and it just kind of threw it back in our face, and I just didn't like that. But I would be amenable. I'll go along with it.
Well, I'm not looking at the suspension to, be a penalty for his business for any stretch, but at the same time, at some point we have to decide how much is enough, when is enough enough.
Sure.
Now, bearing in mind you may not want to answer this, but if we did suspend and say you couldn't use any of your outdoor facilities, is that going to put your business under? Or is that just going to make it this summer be much more difficult for you, in that you're not going to be able to bring in the NFL and the other players? Without getting into your financial, I'm just...
For us, we were able to expand a lot financially with the turf area. It would hurt financially, but we'd have to make it work. I do not want to lose that outdoor area. That's the last thing I want to do. But if it means we have to suspend and take the financial hit in the short term to be able to save the project, then that's something that I'm going to have to do.
And remind me, what did you state was your date when you anticipate everything being done? August?
August 15th.
15th, okay.
We were talking with Sean, and he said once Adam, the engineer that's doing all of our plans, he said that, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, I think he said that it would be anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks to get final approval on that. Once that's set, then the concrete company that we already have a contract with would be able to go ahead and start the project and move forward with that. Ideally, I would like it done before the end of the July so that going into the fall, we don't have anything over our head and we can just move forward. But that, if I'm understanding correctly what Sean said, that would be the longest part, is making sure that the engineering and the surveys and everything is, because I think first submittal, we planned June 3rd, and then depending on what other changes, I'm not an engineer, so I don't know that part. Depending on that, then the final approval would come after that one.
Okay, thank you.
Sean, the dates that Mr. Standiford just laid out, do you find them to be aligned with what your beliefs are?
Yeah, I think with the right amount of effort from his team, they're completely doable.
Okay, thank you.
So then, Alma, I guess it comes down to the city and to you as to whether we think we are all going to be agreeable to that. What would be the city's recommendation? I mean, would the city be amenable to us giving an extension to August 15th as a drop dead date? If every condition was not satisfied, it would be revoked.
Yeah, I think you would, in terms of the extension methodology, suspension or extension, as was noted during the presentation, either of those are acceptable alternatives. It's absolutely up to the commission. Staff does not object to either alternative. We just want to make sure that we understood how specific those interim deadlines were. I think it's essential, just as we said during the January 27th meeting, getting the engineering work done is, as the first step in the process, the first step in the critical path. If that doesn't happen, then nothing else is going to, no other deadlines are going to be met. June 3rd is a week away. If that plan set is not already underway, I don't know if you can make it. That's a tight turnaround. Sean said, with a valiant effort, they can do it, but not with a medium effort. That's a fair amount of work and not so much time. So.
Yeah, it's going to take a good amount of effort the whole way through. And if Mr. Sanford is committed to, leading his team and, cracking the whip when necessary, we'll be able to get the design plans approved. We'll be able to get it built. It's just a matter of how many resources you throw at this project. If it's little, there's little chance for success. If it's a lot, then there's a great chance of success.
Thank you.
Just for clarification, our next meeting, taking into all that consideration, would be August the 25th. If we extended this to August the 25th, would the city have a problem with our extension to August the 25th, or would that be?
That would work.
Okay.
Seeing that would work.
Okay.
So I just want to be clear, we're discussing an extension with a suspension, correct? Because I would not be agreeable to an extension without a suspension. Like I stated, the applicant has received benefit of his CUP with, I'm going to use Sean's word, I understand that his attorney has stated that there has been valiant effort to acquire this property. But on our end, what we see is minimal effort to comply with the conditions put before him. So I would not be agreeable to, an extension without a suspension.
When you say suspension, are you speaking to the outdoor area?
That's correct. Suspension of what this conditional use permit allows them to do. That's correct.
Yeah, okay. Any other conversation, comments, questions? Ready for a motion?
Well, I mean, there's only three of us. We all have to agree to vote, you know.
Yeah.
We can see where that's gonna go. I guess let me ask you this. If we put a suspension, that would only be until all the conditions are met. So if the conditions are met, there's a miracle. Conditions are met August 1st, they would then be able to use the outdoor facilities. They don't have to wait for us to come back August 25th. Do we need to write that in there?
I think you should be specific in that regard, that,
Okay.
If the ultimate vote is to suspend until all conditions are met, then you can word it in that way, and then we will come back and report to you on August 25th for your list.
Does that work for you? Is that doable for you, Mr. Standifer?
I don't want to lose the outdoor area. If I have to do that, it will be done.
Okay.
Well,
That gives you an incentive.
but based on this, you're gonna lose it for a while. You understand that? Yes, okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure you understood what we were, okay. Do you want to make that motion? No, you all, almost. He looked at me like.
Okay. Motion, well, I'm trying to think of all the conditions that we placed here. So we're going to, motion to extend, the CUP, to August 26th, August 25th, with a suspension in that, the applicant, should the condition, until the conditions, are met, should the conditions be met prior to August 25th, then, the applicant will have full use of his facility. In the event that the conditions are not met by our August 25th meeting, revocation of this conditional use permit for noncompliance will take place.
The latter, it would have to come back. And just to clarify, and was that the end of your motion? And I'll clarify. So I think we would add to that or clarify that action would take place by modifying the conditions of approval to include that language regarding the suspension and the deadline. And you do direct staff to incorporate your motion into the conditions of approval.
Yes.
I will second what she said.
Call the roll, please.
I have a motion by Commissioner Antuna and second by Commissioner Hatcher to extend CUP 2020-004, and furthermore, finding that the project is out of compliance with the current conditions of approval, and authorizing the modification of the conditions of approval to suspend all outdoor operations permitted under CUP 2020-004 until all conditions have been complied with. If the conditions if all conditions have not been complied by August 25th, the CUP will be brought back before the commission. Does that sound correct?
I didn't know the lady spoke that well, but yes, it's
George, the only thing
very
would be if the conditions are met prior to the August 25th, that they can.
Thank you. And I would like to also add for the record that if all conditions of approval are met prior to the August 25th PC hearing, all outdoor activities will be fully allowed and permitted with this CUP.
Okay,
Commissioner Antuna?
Yes.
Commissioner Bedstead is absent today. Commissioner Cunningham?
Yes.
Commissioner Hatcher?
Yes.
And Chair Hinkle is absent today.
Thank you. Have any parting comments? No comments? We're all good? All right, then I'll adjourn the meeting at 7:20.